My jealous sister slapped me across the face in the jewelry store and called me Shadow because I was treated like a VIP. Then a billionaire walked in, looked at her and said, "Touch my wife again and see." She froze, then stammered. My jealous brother slapped me across the face in the jewelry store and called me Shadow because I was treated like a VIP. Then a billionaire walked in, looked at him and said, "Touch my husband again and see." He froze, then stammered. This isn't just a story about a slap. It's about the moment I stopped shrinking myself to fit into someone else's shadow and finally owned my worth. The day my own brother's hand stung my cheek in an upscale jewelry store, it didn't just leave a mark on my face. It cracked open a whole new future I never saw coming. I'm Jason, 27, and last Tuesday, I was standing in Bellamy's, a jewelry store so fancy it practically had its own postcode. I was there heart-thrumming, admiring a watch I'd spent months saving for. After years of barely scraping by, I finally had something to celebrate. But just as I was about to make the purchase, the doors chimed, and in stormed my brother Aaron, his face a mask of pure fury. Before I could even blink, his hand connected with my cheek. The sound echoed through the silent store, sharp and brutal. And what happened next? Well, that changed everything. Growing up with Aaron was like living in the path of a Category 5 hurricane. He was 2 years older, always seemed sharper, and somehow always the undisputed center of the universe. While I was clocking hours at after-school jobs since I was 16, just trying to make ends meet, Aaron flitted from hobby to friend group, utterly confident our parents would just cover it, and they always did. Our childhood home wasn't a mansion, but we had what we needed. My dad was a high school teacher. My mom ran a small boutique, and they scraped together enough to shower Aaron with everything he desired. Sports camps, a first car, new clothes every season. Me? I saved my babysitting money for a used laptop and graphic design software. "Jason, be reasonable," Mom would say whenever I dared point out the blatant favoritism. "Your brother needs more support. You've always been so independent." Independent wasn't a choice for me. It was survival. By 20, I was out working full-time at a print shop, taking night classes for my graphic design degree. Aaron, meanwhile, stayed home until he was 25 when our parents finally bought him a condo as a graduation gift after his third attempt at community college. Last month, though, something shifted for me. It was my 5th anniversary at Boyd Creative. I'd worked my butt off, climbing from junior designer to leading major accounts. My boss, Natalie, had just given me a substantial raise after I landed this huge new campaign. For the first time, I had breathing room, real breathing room. And I decided, you know what? I'm buying myself something I've always wanted, but never let myself have, a real luxury watch. The Sunday before the jewelry store incident, we had our usual family dinner at my parents' house. I was so excited to share my promotion news, but naturally, Aaron commandeered the conversation. "Everyone, I have an announcement," he'd boomed, flashing a photo of a massive diamond ring. "Tessa said yes. We're getting married next spring." Tessa, his girlfriend of 5 months, just grinned uncomfortably beside him. Her primary appeal, as far as I could tell, was her family money and her father's construction firm. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful," Mom gushed, rushing to embrace him. Dad clapped Aaron on the back like he'd won the lottery. When I finally managed to mention my promotion, Mom just nodded distractedly. "That's nice, honey. Now, Aaron, tell us how you proposed." That night, something inside me hardened. The watch wasn't an indulgence anymore. It was a statement, a defiant, gleaming reminder that my accomplishments mattered, even if only to me. Bellamy's wasn't the most expensive jewelry store in Phoenix, but it was certainly the most intimidating. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting rainbows on glass display cases. The staff wore tailored suits, and security cameras watched every move. I'd walked past it countless times, but never dared to enter. That Tuesday morning, I took a half day off work. I put on my best charcoal suit, styled my hair, and even wore the good leather shoes, a rarity for someone who lives in sneakers and jeans. I wanted to look like I belonged there. Pushing open the heavy glass door, I was met by the gentle notes of classical music and the subtle scent of expensive cologne. A tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked hair approached me with a warm smile. "Welcome to Bellamy's. How may I assist you today?" My mouth went dry. "I'm looking for a watch," I managed, my voice a little shaky. "Something classic but good quality. It's my first real purchase." Instead of the condescension I feared, Tara's eyes lit up. "Your first fine timepiece. That's a special milestone. Let's find something perfect for you." She led me to a display explaining movements and craftsmanship as she showed me several pieces. I was just starting to relax when the door chimed again, announcing another customer. I wouldn't have turned around except for the voice. It cut through the refined atmosphere like a jagged knife. "Oh my God, Jason, what are you doing here?" Aaron stood in the doorway, flanked by his 2 college friends, Brett and Kyle. He was wearing a designer polo, crisp white sneakers that cost more than my rent, and a smug grin that put him 3 inches above my confidence. His recently trimmed hair was styled to perfection. "Are you lost?" he continued, his voice echoing. "Isn't this place a bit out of your league?" Tara's eyebrows rose slightly, but her professional demeanor never wavered. "Your brother is looking at our watch collection. Would you care to join us?" Aaron laughed, striding toward us with his friends trailing behind. "Yeah, unfortunately, we share DNA, though you'd never guess looking at us." The The implied comparison hung heavy in the air. Aaron had always been the golden boy, the charming one everyone gravitated toward. I took after our mother's side, quieter, more reserved. I didn't know you were shopping today, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you looking for wedding bands? Just browsing, Aaron shrugged, peering into the case. Tessa and I will probably go to a real jeweler in Scottsdale. What are you buying? A knockoff? Tara cleared her throat. Actually, your brother has excellent taste. He's considering this Swiss automatic. Aaron's eyes narrowed as he examined the watch Tara held. That, on your salary? That seems excessive. I got a promotion, I said, feeling heat rush to my face. I can afford it. A promotion at that little print shop. Impressive. Aaron's tone dripped with sarcasm. What does that mean? An extra $1 an hour? Brett snickered. Kyle pretended to examine a set of cufflinks. I noticed an older couple across the store watching us with disapproving expressions. It's a graphic design agency, not a print shop, I corrected, knowing the distinction meant nothing to Aaron. And the raise is substantial. Well, good for you, Aaron replied, picking up another watch. Though, if you had any financial sense, you'd invest that money instead of blowing it on a wrist ornament. But that's always been your problem, hasn't it? Poor decision-making. 5 years of therapy had taught me not to take Aaron's bait, but his words still stung. Tara, sensing the tension, gently tried to redirect. This one would suit you beautifully, she said, holding the watch to my wrist. The dial catches light magnificently. It's perfect, I agreed, pointedly ignoring Aaron. I'll take it. Seriously? Aaron stepped closer, his overpowering cologne filling the space. You're going to spend thousands on a watch right after I announced my engagement. This is so typical of you. The accusation blindsided me. What does my buying a watch have to do with your engagement? You can't stand that I'm the center of attention for once. You've always been jealous of me. Aaron's voice rose, causing a security guard to glance our way. For once? I laughed, incredulous. You've always been the center of attention. I've spent my life in your shadow. Gentlemen, Tara interjected. Perhaps we could... Aaron cut her off. In my shadow? That's rich. You're the one Mom and Dad brag about with your scholarship and career. Poor Aaron can't compete with perfect Jason. The distortion of reality was so complete, it stunned me momentarily. Had we grown up in the same household? Had he not noticed the countless times our parents had prioritized his needs, his wants, his dramas? That's not true, and you know it, I said quietly, acutely aware of the audience we'd attracted. 2 more sales associates had paused, and an elegant man browsing cufflinks had stepped back from his display. You know what? I don't have to listen to this. I turned to Tara. I'd like to purchase the watch now. Don't you dare walk away from me! Aaron grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. I pulled away. Don't make a scene, Aaron. This is embarrassing. I'm embarrassing? You're the one buying jewelry you can't afford just to upstage my engagement. Not everything is about you, I said, my patience finally snapping. This has nothing to do with your engagement. I earned this money. I saved for months and I'm buying something nice for myself for once. Tara discreetly slid the watch into a velvet box and moved toward the register, clearly hoping to expedite the transaction. Aaron followed, his face flushing. How much is that watch anyway? Tara hesitated, looking at me for permission. I nodded. $2,800, she said calmly. Aaron's jaw dropped. $3,000? Are you insane? That's what Mom and Dad spent on your entire semester of college that they paid for. I worked through school, I reminded him. This is my money. It's a waste. A complete waste. Aaron's voice echoed through the store. You're just trying to prove something because you're jealous of my ring, my fiancé, my life. I'm not jealous of you, Aaron, I said, the simple truth resonating. I never have been. The truth seemed to snap something in him, his face contorted with rage, and before I could react, his hand swung through the air and connected with my cheek. The sound cracked like a whip in the hushed store. Pain bloomed across my face as my eyes stung. The store fell completely silent. The classical music suddenly muted, as if someone had turned down the volume on reality itself. My hand went to my burning cheek as I stared at my brother in disbelief. In 27 years, through all our fights and disagreements, he had never struck me. Not once. Tara's mouth formed a perfect O of shock. Brett and Kyle had frozen mid-motion, suddenly fascinated by the floor tiles. The security guard straightened, moving toward us, and then a deep, authoritative voice broke the silence from behind me. Touch my husband again and see what happens. The voice belonged to a tall man in his late 30s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed custom tailoring. His dark hair was styled with precision, and his jawline could have been carved from marble. But what struck me most were his eyes, steel gray and absolutely unwavering as they fixed on Aaron. Excuse me, Aaron stammered, his bravado faltering. The man stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of me. You heard me. If you raise a hand to my husband again, you'll regret it. Confusion rippled through the store. Tara looked between us with wide eyes. Even the security guard paused. Your husband, Aaron repeated, his gaze darting between the stranger and me. I was equally confused, too stunned to speak. Husband. I'd never seen this man before in my life. Yes, my husband, the man continued, his voice controlled but hard as granite. And I don't appreciate witnessing him being assaulted in public. A flicker of fear crossed Aaron's face as he took in the man's expensive watch, the quality of his suit, his commanding presence. For once, he seemed at a loss for words. The man turned slightly toward me, and I caught a flash of confusion in his eyes when he saw my face more clearly. His confident expression faltered for just a moment before he recovered. "Cole, are you all right?" he asked, his tone softening considerably. "I'm not," I began, but he had already turned back to Aaron. "I don't know who you are or what your problem is, but this behavior is completely unacceptable. I suggest you leave before I have security escort you out." Aaron's shock was giving way to indignation. "Do you even know who I am? That's my brother, not your husband. His name is Jason." The man blinked, looking back at me more carefully. A slight flush crept up his neck as realization dawned. "I apologize for the confusion," he said, his composure slipping momentarily. "But my point stands. Your behavior is inexcusable." I finally found my voice. "Who are you?" "Harrison Walsh," he replied, extending his hand, "and I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. From behind, you look remarkably like my husband, Cole." The name registered instantly. Harrison Walsh, founder of Innovate Tech, the software company that had revolutionized digital security. His net worth was estimated at several $billion. His face occasionally appeared in business magazines. "You're Harrison Walsh." Aaron's tone shifted dramatically, hostility melting into sickening sweetness. "Oh my goodness, what an honor. I'm such a fan of your work." Harrison didn't even look at him. "Are you all right?" he asked me again. That looked painful. I nodded, my cheek still stinging. "I'm fine. Just a mistake in identity." "The mistake was mine, but my concern is genuine," Harrison said. "Family disagreements shouldn't escalate to physical violence." "It wasn't a disagreement," Aaron interjected, trying desperately to salvage the situation. "We were just playing around, brothers. You know, Jason knows I didn't mean anything by it." The boldness of the lie made my blood boil. I could feel the heat spreading from my stinging cheek down into my chest. A slow burn of disbelief that my own brother would stand there, in front of a billionaire, in front of strangers, and simply rewrite what had just happened as though the truth were clay he could reshape with his bare hands. "That's not true," I said, my voice clear and steady, surprising even myself with how little it shook. "You slapped me because I wouldn't let you make me feel small about buying something nice for myself." "That's absurd," Aaron protested, looking at Harrison with a pleading expression, the same wounded puppy look he'd perfected at 8 years old and never once retired. "Jason always exaggerates. He's upset because I just got engaged and he's still single." The comment landed exactly where Aaron intended it to, a small poisoned dart aimed at the oldest insecurity he could find. A few weeks ago, it might have worked. Today, it just sounded desperate, the last card of a man who'd run out of better ones. Harrison's expression remained impassive, unmoved by the deflection. "I witnessed the entire exchange," he said, his tone even, almost clinical, the tone of a man accustomed to being listened to. "You were belittling his accomplishments and attempting to make him feel guilty for spending his own money. When that didn't work, you resorted to physical aggression." He said it the way someone might read a weather report, flat and factual, which somehow made it land harder than if he'd shouted it. The security guard had finally reached our group, moving with the unhurried urgency of someone who'd clearly never had to break up a fight in a store like this before, accompanied by a distinguished older man in a pinstriped suit whose silver cufflinks caught the chandelier light as he approached. "Mr. Walsh," the older man said, his voice deferential, almost reverent, the voice reserved for the kind of customer whose name alone could make or break a quarter. "Is there a problem?" Harrison nodded in greeting, unhurried, entirely in control of the room in a way I'd never seen anyone be in control of a room. "This man," he gestured to Aaron, the gesture small but unmistakably damning, "just assaulted another customer, Mr. Bellamy." So this was the Bellamy of Bellamy's Jewelry. The owner himself had come to investigate, and something about his sudden appearance made the whole store seem to hold its breath. I noticed, almost absently, that Tara had gone very still behind the counter, the velvet box with my watch inside still resting in her hands, forgotten for the moment. "I did no such thing," Aaron protested, his voice climbing an octave, the practiced innocence cracking at the edges. "This is all a misunderstanding. Tell them, Jason." All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of that attention settle over my shoulders like a familiar coat, one I'd worn my whole life without ever choosing it, the coat of the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over so the family could keep pretending everything was fine. For a moment, I felt the familiar urge to smooth things over, to minimize the incident for the sake of family peace. It was what I'd always done. At every holiday, every birthday, every quiet dinner where Aaron's mood dictated the temperature of the room. But something had shifted inside me when Aaron's palm connected with my face, some final thread that had been fraying for 27 years finally snapping clean. "He slapped me," I said clearly, the words firm, deliberate, each one a small act of defiance I'd never allowed myself before, because I decided to buy this watch instead of listening to him criticize me. Mr. Bellamy's expression hardened, the polished hospitality mask slipping to reveal something colder and more absolute underneath. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for violent behavior in our establishment," he said, each word precise, final. "I'm afraid I must ask you to leave immediately." "You can't be serious," Aaron sputtered, his composure finally cracking entirely, the polished veneer giving way to something petulant and childish. "Do you know who our father is?" The question hung in the air, absurd in its desperation. desperation, and I watched Brett and Kyle exchange a glance that told me even they found it embarrassing. I don't believe that's relevant, Mr. Bellamy replied coolly, not even bothering to disguise his distaste. Frank, please escort this gentleman and his companions to the exit. The security guard stepped forward, his tone polite but leaving no room for negotiation. This way, please. Jason, you can't let them do this. Aaron's voice rose again, panic creeping into it now, the first genuine emotion he'd shown since he'd walked through the door. Tell them we were just having a brotherly spat. I said nothing, watching as Frank gently but firmly guided Aaron toward the door, one hand hovering near his elbow without quite touching him, a study in professional restraint. Brett and Kyle followed a few paces behind, their expressions mortified, both of them suddenly very interested in their phones, in the floor, in anything that wasn't the eyes of the other customers still watching from across the store. At the door, Aaron turned back one last time, and for a split second I saw something almost like hurt cross his face before the anger swallowed it whole. You'll regret this, Jason. Wait until Mom and Dad hear about how you humiliated me in public. The glass door swung shut behind them, and the chime that had announced their arrival now sounded almost apologetic on their exit, a small, cheerful note utterly at odds with the tension still hanging in the air. After they left, the store remained uncomfortably quiet, the classical music slowly creeping back up in volume, as though the whole building were exhaling. A few of the other customers pretended to return to their browsing, though I caught more than one curious glance still drifting my way. Harrison Walsh turned to me, genuine regret in his expression, the hard authority from a moment ago softening into something almost gentle. I've made this situation more complicated and I apologize, he said. Please allow me to make it up to you. Perhaps coffee after you've completed your purchase. I'd like to explain properly. I hesitated, unsure what to make of this surreal turn of events, still half convinced I'd imagined the last 10 minutes entirely. My cheek still throbbed faintly, a dull reminder that this had, in fact, actually happened. But something in his earnest expression, some quiet sincerity that didn't match the billionaire tech mogul image I'd built in my head from magazine covers, made me nod. Okay, coffee would be nice. Mr. Bellamy personally completed my transaction, apologizing profusely for the unfortunate incident, insisting on wrapping the box himself with a care that seemed almost like penance. I signed the credit card slip with shaking hands, still processing the whirlwind of events, my signature coming out shakier and more slanted than usual. As Tara handed me the distinctive blue bag containing my watch, she gave my arm a small, kind squeeze, the first purely human gesture anyone had offered me since I'd walked through those doors that morning. Harrison Walsh waited patiently by the door, hands in his pockets, looking for all the world like a man with nowhere else more important to be. I joined him, wondering what strange twist of fate had brought a billionaire tech mogul into my family drama on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. Harrison suggested a small cafe around the corner, away from the busy main street, tucked behind a row of boutiques I'd never once thought to enter. It was an elegant space with private booths and soft jazz playing, exposed brick and dim brass lighting, the kind of place I'd normally walk past, assuming it was beyond my budget without even glancing at the menu in the window. I come here when I need to think, Harrison explained as a server led us to a corner table tucked away from the other patrons. The espresso is excellent, and they respect privacy. I noticed the way the staff greeted him with a familiar nod, rather than the fawning recognition I might have expected. Further proof, I supposed, that this really was a place he came often, a small refuge from whatever pressures came with running a company worth billions. Once we were seated with coffee, an Americano for him, a latte for me, the foam still holding its careful leaf pattern, Harrison leaned forward, genuinely apologetic, his fingers laced together on the table between us. I need to explain what happened back there. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. My husband Cole is in London on business, and I was at Bellamy's looking for an anniversary gift. When I saw you from behind, your height, your hair color and style, even the charcoal suit, you looked remarkably like him. When that man slapped you, I reacted instinctively. He shook his head slightly, almost embarrassed by his own certainty in the moment. I didn't stop to think. I just moved. It's okay, I said, and found that I meant it, still processing the bizarre sequence of events that had led me to this quiet corner table with a stranger who happened to be one of the wealthiest men in the country. Your intervention probably prevented things from getting worse. Aaron doesn't handle public correction well. If you hadn't stepped in, I don't know how long that would have kept escalating. Harrison's expression darkened slightly, a flicker of something protective crossing his face even now, minutes removed from the confrontation. Family can be complicated, he said carefully. I shouldn't presume to understand your relationship with your brother. No, you read the situation correctly, I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to hold on to. Aaron has always been the favorite child. He's not used to me standing up for myself. Ah, family dynamics, Harrison nodded, a faint knowing smile touching the corner of his mouth, the smile of someone who'd navigated similar terrain and lived to tell about it. My younger sister and I had a similar relationship for many years. Something in his tone made me curious, a weight beneath the words that suggested there was more to the story than a passing comment. Did it improve? move? I asked. Harrison took a sip of his coffee, considering the question with the same deliberate care he seemed to bring to everything. Yes, eventually. It took distance, time, and some difficult conversations. He set the cup down, turning it slightly on its saucer. Tara resented living in my shadow after Innovate Tech took off. She felt compared to me at every turn, every family dinner, every holiday. It didn't matter what she accomplished on her own. It always got measured against what I'd built. That sounds familiar, I said, a small, humorless laugh escaping me before I could stop it. Though in my case, I was always in Aaron's shadow, not the other way around. He never had to build anything. He just had to exist loudly enough, and our parents did the rest. The underlying issue is the same, Harrison replied, leaning back slightly. Comparison is the thief of joy. Whether you're the one being overshadowed or the one doing the overshadowing without meaning to, it poisons the relationship either way. He was quiet for a moment, as though deciding how much more to share. Once Tara and I acknowledged the wedge between us and started communicating honestly, things improved. Really improved. Not just surface-level politeness at holidays. She runs our European operations now, completely on her own merit, and I make a point of never being in the room when her name comes up in board meetings. She earned that distance. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily after that, the initial strangeness of the situation giving way to something almost comfortable. Harrison Walsh might have been a billionaire, a man whose face I'd seen on magazine covers in doctor's office waiting rooms, but he spoke without pretension, without the practiced charm of someone performing humility for an audience. He listened attentively as I explained more about my relationship with Aaron and my parents, asking small, precise questions that showed he was actually absorbing what I said, rather than simply waiting for his turn to speak. "So this watch," he said eventually, gesturing to the Bellamy's bag resting on the bench beside me, the blue ribbon still crisp and untouched. "It represents more than just a timepiece to you." It wasn't quite a question. "It's proof that my work has value," I confirmed, surprising myself with how easily the words came out, how true they felt once spoken aloud. "That I have value independent of my family's approval." Harrison nodded thoughtfully, turning his own cup slowly between his palms. "I understand that completely," he said. "When I sold my first software at 19, barely more than a kid really, I used the money to buy a ridiculously expensive watch. Not because I needed it, God knows I didn't need it, but because it represented validation, proof to myself that the work had meant something, even if no one else in my life was going to say so." "Exactly," I said, surprised at how precisely he'd captured the feeling, how a man worth billions and a graphic designer who'd spent months saving for a single purchase could land on the exact same truth from such different starting points. Our coffee cups were empty when Harrison glanced at his phone and frowned slightly. "I have a meeting in 30 minutes, but I've enjoyed our conversation." He hesitated, then asked, "What exactly do you do in graphic design?" "I'm a lead designer at Boyd Creative. We handle branding and marketing for several national accounts. I specialize in digital media integration." Harrison's eyes lit with interest. "Digital media integration. We're actually looking for someone with that expertise at Innovate Tech. Our marketing team needs fresh perspectives for our new consumer security app." "Really?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Would you be interested in sending your portfolio?" "No pressure, of course, just an opportunity to explore." My heart raced at the prospect. Innovate Tech was known for its innovative work environment and exceptional compensation packages. Even an interview would be valuable experience. "I'd love to," I replied, trying to sound professional rather than eager. Harrison smiled and pulled out a business card. "Email me directly. I'll make sure it gets to our creative director." As we stood to leave, Harrison paused. "One more thing. Don't let your brother's reaction diminish your accomplishment today. That watch represents your hard work. Wear it with pride." I nodded, touched by his understanding. "Thank you for everything." Walking back to my car, I felt strangely light despite the morning's drama. The encounter with Aaron had been painful, but Harrison's unexpected mentorship had shifted something in my perspective. For perhaps the first time, I'd stood my ground without apologizing for taking up space. My phone buzzed with incoming texts. 3 from my mother, 2 from my father, and 7 from Aaron. I silenced it without reading them. Whatever family storm was brewing could wait until I was ready to face it. By the time I arrived home that evening, my phone had accumulated 23 text messages and 9 missed calls. Aaron's text escalated from angry, "How dare you embarrass me like that?" to manipulative, "Mom is really upset with you," to fake conciliatory, "I forgive you for overreacting." My parents' messages were predictably one-sided, demanding I call immediately to explain why I'd caused a scene and humiliated my brother. None of them mentioned the slap. I set the phone aside and took out the velvet box containing my new watch. Under the soft lamplight, the dial gleamed, catching the light with quiet brilliance. It was beautiful, but more importantly, it was mine, earned through my own efforts, chosen with my own taste, purchased with my own money. Instead of calling my family, I spent the evening polishing my digital portfolio. If Harrison Walsh's offer was genuine, I wanted to be prepared. The response came the next morning while I was at work, making me almost drop my coffee mug. "Jason, thank you for sending your impressive portfolio. Our creative director, Amy Sullivan, would like to meet with you this Friday at 2 p.m. Please let me know if this works with your schedule." Regards, Harrison Walsh. It wasn't just a courtesy introduction. He was actually arranging an interview. I quickly confirmed the time, then spent the rest of the morning in a haze of disbelief and excitement. That evening, I finally steeled myself to call my parents. As expected, my mother answered with immediate disapproval. Jason Michael Hayes, what on earth happened yesterday? Aaron is absolutely devastated. I took a deep breath. Mom, did Aaron tell you he slapped me across the face in a public store? A pause. He said there was a misunderstanding, that you were making a scene about his engagement. That's not what happened, I said firmly. I was buying a watch with money from my recent promotion, which by the way, no one congratulated me on at Sunday dinner. Aaron showed up, criticized me, and when I wouldn't back down, he slapped me hard enough to leave a mark. Well, I'm sure he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it, I interrupted. A stranger had to intervene because it was so inappropriate. The store owner asked him to leave. A stranger? Aaron mentioned some man getting involved in family business where he didn't belong. I almost laughed. That some man was Harrison Walsh, the founder of Innovate Tech, a billionaire who recognized abusive behavior when he saw it. My mother fell silent, processing this information. Finally, she said, your brother is still very upset. I'm sure he is. Being held accountable is upsetting when you're not used to it. Jason, that's a terrible thing to say about your brother. Is it, Mom? When was the last time Aaron faced consequences for his actions? When was the last time you or Dad didn't take his side? Another pause. We don't take sides. This time I did laugh. Mom, you've been taking sides our entire lives. I'm just finally acknowledging it. I don't know what's gotten into you, my mother replied, her voice tight. This isn't like you at all. Maybe that's the problem, I said quietly. Maybe it's exactly what should have been like me all along. The conversation ended shortly after with my mother expressing disappointment in my attitude and suggesting I call Aaron to apologize. I promised to think about it, knowing I had no intention of making that call. Friday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. I chose a professional outfit, wore my new watch for confidence, and arrived at the sleek Innovate Tech headquarters 15 minutes early. The building was a marvel of modern architecture, all glass and sustainable materials, with a lobby featuring a spectacular living wall of tropical plants. The receptionist directed me to the 14th floor, where I was greeted by a friendly assistant named Jordan. Ms. Sullivan is running a few minutes late, Jordan explained, leading me to a comfortable waiting area. Can I get you water or coffee? Water would be great, thank you. As Jordan walked away, a familiar voice called my name. Harrison Walsh approached with a warm smile, dressed more casually than at our first meeting, dark jeans and a navy button-down. Jason, glad you could make it. How are you? Good, thank you. A bit nervous, I admitted. No need to be. Amy was impressed with your portfolio, particularly the Sunrise Healthcare campaign. She's eager to meet you. We chatted briefly about the company until a striking woman with copper-colored hair and vibrant green glasses approached. You must be Jason, she said, extending her hand. I'm Amy Sullivan. Sorry for the delay. Creative emergencies. You know how it is. Absolutely, I smiled, instantly liking her direct manner. The interview was unlike any I'd experienced. Rather than standard questions, Amy engaged me in a detailed discussion about design philosophy and creative problem solving. She showed me current Innovate Tech marketing materials and asked for my honest critique, nodding appreciatively at my suggestions. Harrison mostly observed, occasionally asking insightful questions about my collaborative process and adaptability. His presence was supportive rather than intimidating, and I found myself speaking with unexpected confidence about my vision and capabilities. One last question, Amy said, glancing at Harrison before continuing. Our team works closely with developers who can be, let's say, particular about their creations. How do you handle strong personalities and creative conflicts? I thought about the countless times I'd navigated Aaron's demands and my parents' expectations, finding diplomatic solutions while preserving my own boundaries. I believe in finding the common goal beneath the conflict, I replied. Most creative disagreements stem from everyone wanting the best outcome, but seeing different paths to get there. I try to honor each perspective while keeping the ultimate purpose in focus. Amy nodded, seemingly satisfied. Well, Jason, this has been illuminating. We have a few more candidates to interview, but you'll hear from us by next Wednesday. As Amy gathered her notes, Harrison asked, do you have time for a quick tour before you leave? I'd love that, I replied, surprised by the offer. Harrison led me through the innovative workspace, introducing me to various team members along the way. The environment was collaborative yet focused with thoughtful amenities like quiet pods, standing desks, and a stunning rooftop garden. What do you think? Harrison asked as we stood on the rooftop overlooking the city. It's incredible, I answered. Honestly, everything seems designed to support both creativity and well-being. That's exactly the balance we strive for, he nodded. When people feel valued, they produce their best work. As we returned to the lobby, Harrison paused. I hope you don't find this intrusive, but I wanted to ask, how are things with your family after Tuesday's incident? I sighed. Complicated. They expect me to apologize to Aaron. They don't see his behavior as the problem. Harrison's expression was thoughtful. Family patterns are persistent. It took years for my sister and me to break ours. He hesitated, then added, whatever happens with this position, Jason, don't lose the confidence you showed at Bellamy's. That kind of self-advocacy is valuable everywhere, not just in jewelry stores. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved. That means a lot. As I drove home, I reflected on the strange sequence of events that had led me here. A painful public confrontation had somehow opened doors I never imagined approaching. My phone rang as I pulled into my apartment complex. It was Aaron. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Hello, Jason. His voice was tight. We need to talk about what happened. I took a deep breath. Yes, we do. But not if the conversation begins with you expecting me to apologize. Excuse me? His tone sharpened. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. No, Aaron. You embarrassed yourself by slapping me in public. That's assault, by the way. Don't be so dramatic. It was barely a tap. It was hard enough to leave a mark, I countered. And you did it because I wouldn't let you make me feel bad about buying something nice for myself. This isn't about the stupid watch, he snapped. It's about you trying to steal attention from my engagement. The familiar accusation might once have made me defensive. Now it just sounded pathetic. Aaron, buying a watch has nothing to do with your engagement. Not everything is about you. You've changed, he said accusingly. You're not the same brother anymore. You're right, I agreed. I have changed. I'm not going to shrink myself to make you comfortable anymore. The line went silent for several seconds. When Aaron spoke again, his voice was cooler. Mom and Dad want us all at dinner this Sunday. They expect you to be there. It was a command, not an invitation. I'll think about it, I said instead. I have a lot going on right now. What could you possibly have going on? The dismissive tone was so familiar it almost made me laugh. Actually, I just interviewed at Innovate Tech. That some man who intervened at the jewelry store. He arranged it. Another silence. You're making that up. Believe what you want, I said, suddenly tired of the conversation. I need to go. I ended the call, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. Sunday arrived with a text from my mother. Dinner at 5. Dad's making his pot roast. Please be on time. In the past, I might have complied, showing up with a placating smile. Instead, I texted back, I'll be there at 5:15. I have errands to run first. A small rebellion, but significant. I dressed carefully, and after a moment's deliberation, wore my new watch. It caught the light as I moved my wrist, reminding me of the strength I'd found at Bellamy's. My father answered the door, his expression a mixture of disapproval and concern. You're late, he said by way of greeting. Hello to you too, Dad, I replied, stepping past him. In the living room, Aaron sat perched on the edge of the sofa, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up as I entered, his expression hardening. Look who finally decided to show up. I chose not to engage. Instead, I walked into the kitchen where my mother was arranging a salad. Jason, good, you're here. Could you set the table? The familiar request, always directed at me, never at Aaron, almost made me acquiesce automatically. Instead, I paused. Actually, Mom, I thought we might talk first about what happened at Bellamy's. Her hands stilled. I don't think that's necessary. We've all cooled down. Let's just have a nice family dinner. A nice family dinner where we pretend Aaron didn't slap me in public? My mother's smile became strained. Jason, please. Your brother is under a lot of stress with the wedding planning. Before I could respond, Aaron appeared in the doorway. Are you still going on about that? It was days ago. 5 days, I corrected. And yes, because no one has acknowledged what actually happened. You slapped me across the face because I wouldn't let you bully me. My father joined us, his expression wary. Let's calm down. I am calm, I interrupted. I am stating facts. Aaron assaulted me in public. A store owner witnessed it and asked him to leave. A complete stranger had to intervene. That man had no right to get involved in family business, my mother said primly. That man, I emphasized, recognized abusive behavior when he saw it, something this family seems incapable of doing. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Abusive, my father repeated. That's a serious accusation, Jason. It's not an accusation. It's a description, I replied. Aaron has been verbally tearing me down for years, and you've both enabled it. Tuesday was just the first time it became physical. That is completely unfair, Aaron protested. I've always been supportive of you. Name one time, I challenged. One specific instance where you supported me instead of competing with me or diminishing my achievements. Aaron opened his mouth and closed it again. Jason, my mother began, her tone conciliatory. Families have ups and downs. Nobody's perfect, but we love each other. Love without respect isn't love, I replied. It's control, and I'm done being controlled. It means I'm setting boundaries. I won't participate in family gatherings where Aaron's behavior is excused and mine is policed, and I won't apologize for standing up for myself. So you're giving us an ultimatum? My father's tone was incredulous. No, Dad. I'm telling you what I need to have a healthy relationship with all of you. What you do with that information is your choice. When I told you about my promotion, you barely acknowledged it, I continued. When Aaron announced his engagement to a woman he's dated for 5 months, you threw an impromptu celebration. That's different, my father interjected. An engagement is a life event. Or is it just that Aaron's achievements align with what you value while mine don't? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable in its accuracy. My mother busied herself with the salad, avoiding eye contact. We moved to the dining room in uneasy silence. As dessert was served, I mentioned carefully, I interviewed at Innovate Tech on Friday, Harrison Walsh's company. You did? My mother interjected, clearly surprised. You didn't mention that. I wasn't sure you'd be interested, I replied honestly. It's just a career opportunity, not a life event. My father winced at having his own words reflected back. back. Of course we're interested, he said. Tell us about it. So I did, describing the impressive headquarters, Amy Sullivan's engaging interview, the innovative environment. As I spoke, I realized my family was listening with genuine attention for perhaps the first time in years. That's wonderful, Jason, my mother said, and I was surprised by the sincerity in her voice. We are proud of you, even if we don't always show it properly. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Aaron remained quiet, but as we cleared the dessert plates, he approached me in the kitchen. Did you really meet Harrison Walsh? He asked, his voice low. Yes, I replied. He mistook me for his husband at first. Aaron was silent for a moment, then said, That's actually pretty cool. I looked at him, searching for the hidden barb, but his expression seemed genuine. The watch looks nice on you, he added awkwardly. I shouldn't have made such a scene at the store. It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Aaron, it was significant. As I drove home that night, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. Jason, it's Harrison Walsh. Amy was very impressed with your interview. Before we make a formal offer, Cole would like to meet you. He returns from London tomorrow. Lunch on Tuesday. Let me know if you're available. I stared at the message, hardly daring to believe what it implied. A formal offer from Innovate Tech. As I typed my enthusiastic acceptance, I caught sight of my reflection in the rearview mirror. The watch on my wrist caught the streetlight, gleaming quietly. It was beautiful, yes, but what it represented was far more valuable. The moment I decided my worth wasn't determined by my brother's opinion or my parents' approval. Sometimes the most painful confrontations led to the most important growth, and sometimes a slap in a jewelry store could change the entire direction of a life.